Blackness, absolute and consuming. The silence was heavy, broken only by the soft, almost imperceptible sound of footsteps. Each step echoed faintly, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. There was a sense of movement, of something unseen stirring in the darkness. A chill ran down your spine, raising goosebumps on your arms. The air grew thick with anticipation, heavy with the unknown. Chris, a young man starting his career in the city, was pleased with his new apartment. It was a small, affordable place, perfect for a bachelor. He had spent the day unpacking boxes, arranging furniture and making the space his own. He felt a sense of accomplishment as he stood in the middle of his living room, taking it all in. The apartment was located at the end of a long, narrow hallway. The hallway was dimly lit, with flickering fluorescent lights overhead. He hadn't thought much of it at the time. It was just a hallway. As days turned into nights, Chris became increasingly uneasy. He started to hear whispers whenever he walked down the hallway. They were faint at first, almost indistinguishable from the rustling of leaves outside, but they grew louder each night. He tried to convince himself it was just the old building settling, but deep down a knot of fear began to tighten in his stomach. One night, as he was walking back to his apartment, he could have sworn he heard his name being whispered. He stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked around but saw nothing. The following night, the hallway was plunged into darkness. The flickering fluorescent lights finally gave out, leaving Chris in absolute blackness. He fumbled for his phone, the cold metal a comfort in his sweaty hand. He used its dim light to guide his way, his heart pounding against his ribs. The whispers seemed closer now, surrounding him, taunting him. He quickened his pace, his fear growing with every step. He could feel a presence in the darkness with him, something cold and unseen. Desperate for reassurance, Chris called his friend Michael. Michael, a skeptic by nature, tried to rationalize Chris's fears. He suggested faulty wiring, drafts, and the power of suggestion as explanations for the strange occurrences. But even Michael couldn't deny the fear in Chris's voice. He agreed to come over, hoping to ease his friend's anxieties. Michael's arrival brought a temporary sense of relief to Chris. Together, they ventured down the hallway, armed with flashlights. The whispers seemed to intensify, swirling around them like a malevolent wind. As they reached the middle of the hallway, Chris saw her. A woman in a white gown, her back turned to them. She stood at the far end of the hallway, her long dark hair cascading down her back. Chris froze, his blood turning to ice in his veins. He gripped Michael's arm, his breath catching in his throat. "Who's there?" Michael called out, his voice echoing in the silent hallway. The figure didn't move, it remained motionless, as if frozen in time. "Hello?" Michael tried again, taking a step forward. As he did, the figure slowly turned. Her face was pale and gaunt, her eyes hollow sockets. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, revealing rows of sharp, pointed teeth. Chris gasped, his hand flying to his mouth to stifle a scream. Terror lent them speed. They didn't need to speak, didn't need to plan. Turning on their heels, they ran. The figure glided towards them, her white gown billowing around her like a shroud. They could hear her raspy breath on their necks, her cold fingers reaching for them. Chris fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He managed to find the right one and jammed it into the lock, flinging the door open. He and Michael tumbled inside, slamming the door shut behind them. Chris and Michael huddled together, their chests heaving, their bodies trembling. They could hear the woman scratching at the door, her angry screams muffled by the wood. Slowly, the sounds faded. The hallway fell silent. Chris didn't sleep that night. He sat huddled in the corner of his living room, clutching a kitchen knife, his eyes fixed on the apartment door. The next morning, Chris packed his things and moved out. He never returned to the apartment. He couldn't bring himself to face the hallway again. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that the woman in white was still out there, lurking in the shadows. The experience left an indelible mark on him. He knew deep down that he would never truly escape the darkness of that hallway. It would haunt him forever.